morning, taxpayers. It's great to be here in beautiful Melbourne and to sort of talk about the economy. Now, for those of you who have been to economics presentations in the past, you've often probably been bombarded with a whole lot of pictures, graphs and these sorts of things. And this morning is going to be no different. I'm going to give you a bit of an assessment of some of the economic things, economic challenges, events that have occurred over the last the last 5 years, I suppose, in the global financial crisis, and give you a bit of a view about what I'm thinking is happening in the world economy. Now, the first picture is the Mona Lisa. Okay, so for hundreds of years we've been trying to work out why Mona Lisa is smiling. Where's that smile from? Well, the reason is fairly clear. She sold all of her stocks in 2008. If you think about where the ASX 200 was in 2008, it was 6,800 points. Where is it this morning? 4,300 points. So it's fallen 35% over 4 years. That's why she's happy. So Edvard Munch, the Scream, the guy he's screaming, why is he upset? Why is he screaming with pain? Well, he's from the US. He thought that house prices would always go up. And as we know in the US economy, we've had house price falls of about 35% in the last 4 or 5 years. So think about that, 35% fall in house prices. Why is the US economy so bad? Why is the US government printing money? Why have they got interest rates set at 0%? Think about it, 0% interest rates in the US. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Well, one of the key reasons is that house prices have fallen 35%. So think about that here. I'll pick a $500,000 house, for example. Just say you bought that 4 years ago. If we had the same circumstance as in the US, that house would be worth something less than $350,000. How would you be? And how would you be if you'd actually borrowed $400,000 to buy it? You'd be screaming too, I'd suspect. Now, Caravaggio did this fantastic painting, and again, those of you who are maybe as old as me have a lot of interest in your superannuation portfolio. Again, linked to that share market performance. In the last 4 years, as the stock market's fallen, as the property trusts have not done so well, we've all lost money in our superannuation fund. That's critically important to how we are feeling. I'll touch on that in a little bit down the track too. But in a sense, the people who advise us to get into some of these structured products, some of these cash plus so-called safe investments, the CDOs and these sorts of things, we've lost money. People are being sued from their poor advice that they've been getting from financial planners, these sorts of things. So the superannuation side of people's portfolio is pretty grim, and no wonder people are feeling a little bit unhappy as well. Before the global financial crisis, 5 years ago, everybody was happy. We were picnicking. Stock market was booming, as I was saying. House prices were going up at 10, 15% per year. We had unemployment down at 4%. Things were fantastic. Picnic time. Everybody was extremely happy. Now it's tin soup. Things are grim. And I think that's not so much in Australia, because Australia's doing pretty well. Again, I'll touch on that a little bit later as well. But right now, in the global economy, think about some of these facts that are confronting some of our friends and trading partners. In Greece and Spain, for example, youth unemployment is more than 50%. Think about that. So if you're aged 15 to 25 in Greece or Spain, there's an even money chance that you're unemployed. And at the moment, those economies are going backwards at such a rapid pace that you're almost certain not to get a job for at least another couple of years. Pretty bad, isn't it? The UK economy, while Andy Murray won the tennis and they've had the Olympic Games and all these other wonderful things about the UK sporting life, their economy is actually performing worse now in this last 4 years than it did during the Great Depression in the 1930s. They've got their economy going backwards for 8 of the last 10 quarters. Their economy is in, well, probably a bit melodramatic to say a depression, but it's not far from it. That's how bad the UK economy is. In the US, we saw numbers just last week again confirming that over the last 4 years, while there's been some pickup in employment, the number of people employed in the US compared to where the population growth has been in the last 5 years is 10 million, almost half the population of Australia, 10 million workers fewer because their economy is so bad. Again, that fall in house prices is hurting sentiment, the weakness in the stock market, the banks which don't lend any money, they don't make any money. That's how bad things actually are in the US economy. So we look around the world at the old-fashioned industrialised economies and basically they're in severe trouble. The only saving light, I suspect, will be the Asian economies, China in particular. India's doing very, very well, but other parts like Vietnam, South Korea, Indonesia, these sorts of emerging economies are where the growth's going to be coming from. So what is economics? How can we explain these sort of things? Well, this is actually my favourite picture. It's Kandinsky, and that's to a lot of people what economics is like. It's lines and graphs and swirls and circles and all these other things. But economics doesn't have to be like that either. That's some sort of formula. I think it explains how the economy grows or something. But economics to a lot of people seems to be very, very complex. My nephew's just finished his economics degree at university, and I'm somewhat surprised, and I was actually a little bit offended that he didn't ask me to help him too much with his economics, but he got terrific marks. But one thing that I did say to him as he was going through his economics is that it's really relatively straightforward. If 9 times out of 10, when you think about the economy, whatever aspect it is, you've probably all heard of this, it's supply and demand that matters, whatever it is, either for a job, for employment. So why is unemployment so high in Spain, for example? Why is it 50% for youths? Well, one reason is that there's no demand. The economy's not growing. And if the economy's not growing, so think about it, if you're a business person and no one's coming in your door to buy your stuff, are you going to be hiring more people? Of course not. So the demand side would be one part of that problem, which is why they're printing money, they're trying to get interest rates down or keep them near zero. Again, extraordinary zero interest rates around a lot of the world, and they're trying to kickstart their economy that particular way. The other side is from the price of labour, and this is a question where some people, they're probably a bit more to the right than I am, are saying that this labour market flexibility is an important part. So if you paid lower wages, you'd employ more people. Again, think about it. If you could hire someone for, I don't know, $2 an hour, would you employ them? Possibly. If you have to pay them $20 an hour, would you? Well, possibly not, although Gina Reinhart's been on about that with the African wages over there. So again, economics, if you just boil it down to, is the price high? If the answer is yes, will demand will fall. If the price is low, it goes up. So economics needn't be this complicated. But at the end of the day, economics influences all of our lives. It's something that when I've been lucky enough to be briefing the Prime Minister about, what we should be saying to President Obama and the Americans about the China-US currency wars, or I've been speaking to HSC students when they've been doing their study, getting ready for their exams and talking to them about how fiscal policy works and those sorts of things. It's so important to our lives, and to get a decent understanding of economics, where the economy is going, how it's growing, these sorts of things, is so important to both business, to individuals, to a whole host of people. But it's about money. Think about it. Economics is about dollars and cents. I was saying everything before about wages and supply and demand, these sorts of things. It's price signals. It's dollars and cents. It's about how the economy is growing. It's what we spend. It's what we earn. It's what we get on our investments. These sorts of things. And the economy, I'm often amazed how, when I'm driving home and or listening to the radio, that the news item comes along and says, today Australia's retail sales numbers were weaker than expected. Now, as an economist, I find that really interesting, but I'm amazed that it's news on the radio. Or we have this obsession every month with the Reserve Bank interest rates. Are they going to cut rates? Are they going to hike them? Are they going to do something else with interest rates? Now, in a sense, we've all got mortgages. We all want to have interest rates coming down. We're all concerned if they go up and these sorts of things. But at the end of the day, we've got this incredible, obsession with how the economy is going and how it's affecting our cash flow, our money, and these sorts of things. And a good economy, I think on any measure, is one that's creating wealth, that it's growing, that it's expanding, it's creating jobs, and for firms it's allowing them to make profits. Those things all sort of go hand in hand. That's a good economy. That's why it matters. That's why, I guess, at the end of the day, we get all this interest in the economy. We get interested in, if you like, why the budget's going to be in surplus next year, or why it shouldn't be in surplus. Or we get issues about, are we spending enough money on people's education so that when my kids grow up, they get a decent job. And of course, we all know that there's a very, very strong correlation between educational attainment and the amount of money that you're going to earn through your life cycle. So, we know that if we can educate our kids from primary school through to secondary school, through to either getting a technical skill or university, whatever the case may be, we're going to be a rich, better society. But if you get it wrong, like the Greeks, like the Spanish, like the Americans, like the British, it destroys wealth, it destroys jobs and it destroys profits. And it's very hard to get back. It's like that old saying, it's very, very difficult to build economic credibility. It's very easy to lose it. You get things wrong and you can get absolutely smashed. And again, when I look at Australia now, and Colin made the point that we're all so bloody miserable here. Australian economy is fantastic. It's doing really well. So don't forget that we've got job creation, we've got wealth slowly coming back up, and we've got the profitability of the economy doing pretty well. So it's important to know where we are, how we got here, and where we're going to be going. Now here's a bit more of an old-fashioned regular chart, I suppose, rather than some wonderful artwork. And again, this is putting the Australian miracle economy, as it's widely referred to, AAA credit rating from all three rating agencies. Never happened in Australia's history. Just late last year, Fitch joined Moody's and Standard & Poor's, those sort of credit rating agency people, to make Australia AAA. That's as good as it gets. And here's sort of one of the reasons why. You can see there that Australia, in terms of its economy, had a little bit of a hiccup during the global financial crisis. Look what happened in Japan. Look what happened in the US. Look what happened in all these other industrialised economies. They had the dip. Now they're sort of growing, but look at where we are. We're doing really well. We're a miracle economy. Okay, part of it was the mining boom. Of course it was. We're getting an incredible mining expansion. Our friends in China, India, Korea, as I mentioned in particular, are paying us a lot of money for the raw materials that we've got. That helped. We had a whole lot of fiscal stimulus measures from the government. That kept people employed. It kept profitability going in enough industries. And so that's one reason why we're doing exceptionally well. I've touched on a couple of times the Asian century. This is it. The government is about to release, I believe, the last time I had coffee in Parliament House, but they're about to release a paper done by the former Secretary of the Treasury, Ken Henry. He's the guy who did the Henry Tax Review and all those other things. Terrific person. He's preparing a white paper on Australia in the Asian century. How are we going to take advantage of this? We know a few basic facts. In about 2015, these things are a little bit hard to measure, but in about 3 years' time, China will be bigger than the US in terms of its contribution to the world economy. It'll be bigger. 20 years ago, it was 1/5 the size of the US. So the US has been slowly losing its importance, and China has rapidly been increasing its importance. So in a sense, that's why in a couple of years' time, if not already, we should be more worried about what happens in the Shanghai stock market than we should be worried about what happens on the Dow Jones. Things are changing. It matters. China matters to us increasingly. And again, when you think about Australia's trade position, a quarter of all of our exports go to China. If we include Asia as a whole, about 70% of all of our exports go to Asia. We know that this growth in Asia is still occurring. The Chinese middle class thing, the other point on the slide, it's got more people, the middle class in China, than the whole of the US population. It's huge. India's catching up. We don't pay as much attention to India as perhaps we should, but India, 1.2 billion people, is growing rapidly as well. So if we can hitch onto that wagon, and they're growing at 7, 8, whatever %, and they will grow for the next 10, 20 years. We know they're building roads, they're building infrastructure. What do they need for all that sort of stuff? They need energy, they need iron ore, they need steel, they need services, they need banking and legal and all these other services. So if we're smart, if we Australians are smart and we get hitched to the Asian century, we're going to, I won't say we'll get a free ride because we've got to work hard to do it, but we could position ourselves brilliantly so that Australia can continue to benefit from being geographically, politically and sort of financially linked into this booming part of the world economy. You'd hate to have as your major trading partner now the UK or the US or these horrid economies that aren't growing at all. So we're lucky that we're hitching to the fast-growing parts of the world economy. The structure of the economy. So this is a bit of a messy chart. I said there'd be a few I'll sort of call them more serious charts, but whatever. You can see this chart goes back 120 years. I borrowed it from a speech that Reserve Bank Governor Glenn Stevens gave about a month or so ago, and it was a great chart. And I don't know what happened between 1940 and 50, roughly, when there was a break in the series. I suspect they were fighting a world war and didn't collect the data on this. But anyway, what you can see here are a couple of big trends that are occurring in the Australian economy, and it's not just in the last 12 months. We've heard all about the demise of manufacturing and, you know, the big pickup in mining, whatever. But if you look at these sorts of charts, you can see that manufacturing, and the sort of sexy topic at the moment is manufacturing. In the 70s, it was about 25% of our economy. It's now less than 10. You know, I'll be blunt, we don't make things as efficiently, as cheaply as most of the rest of the world do. You know, we buy foreign-made cars predominantly. We still sort of prop up our car industry, but I would hazard a guess that in 5 or 10 years we won't be making cars, nor should we. We don't do it as well, and we Australians actually prefer to buy foreign-made cars, if the truth be known. What's also evident in this part is the fall of agriculture. You know, agriculture is a small part of our economy. Important because we export almost everything that we produce, but it's only about 2% of GDP. Interesting, isn't it? And if you look at non-government services, sorry to have all these definitions here, it's now 50% of our economy. That's things like education. We spend a lot of money on that now. Healthcare. That's going to be a booming sector for us over the next 10 and 20 years. Aged care, and this is where things like the National Disability Insurance Scheme is going to be, you know, while that's disabilities, it's also linked to aged care, dementia care and all those sorts of things. These are the issues where Australia's growth is going to be, and it's a common pattern in all rich and industrialising countries like Australia. You move away from basic subsistence living with agriculture to high value-added service industry. That change is happening and it will continue. Okay, 1964. I was 1 back then, but the reason I've got this chart here is to just make one really simple point, again to emphasise how good things are. 1964 was the last time that Australia had simultaneously 3.7% GDP growth, which is what we've got now, a 5.1% unemployment rate, which is what we've got now, a 1.2% inflation rate, which is what we've got now, and a mortgage rate below 7%. We've not had that simultaneously for 48 years. You know, occasionally we've had the economy stronger, or the unemployment rate a little bit lower, or interest rates a bit lower, whatever the case may be. But now, and again, this again comes back to Colin's earlier point, you know, have a smile, things aren't that bad. First time in almost 50 years that we've had these good, on any characterisation, good economic fundamentals. Things are doing okay. Now, we do have a 10-speed economy, you know, or 2-speed, I don't know how many speeds it is, but you've got this industry difference. Mining's booming, manufacturing, tourism weak, WA is booming, Tasmania and Victoria not doing so well. This is a challenge for policymakers. How are they going to deal with this problem? Are they going to have a mining tax, although the opposition want to get rid of it, you know, or are we going to try to have the Reserve Bank intervene in the currency to push the dollar lower to help our tourism manufacturers get a bit of a boost? That's the policy challenge. I won't give the answers now, but we've got this economy that's complex, it's messy, it's difficult, and while the top line numbers are very good, just a little bit underneath that we've got a few problems. So, prices are down. Which prices are those? So in a sense, I've given you the good news. So why, in a sense, is consumer sentiment weak? Why are people feeling reasonably grim? And going back to another proper chart, house prices are down. We Australians have got an obsession with housing. We love it. We have a lot of our wealth tied up in housing. And if you look at all of those different cities, you can see Melbourne there, which is the purpley coloured line, where everybody is here. Look how much it's fallen. It's going down. Prices are falling for house prices. The share market I mentioned before, if you look at the various indices within the share market and look at where they peaked in 2008, they're down a lot. That's sort of hurting sentiment. So while the economy is doing well, in a sense, because my house didn't go up 10% last year, in fact it went down 5%, I'm feeling a bit cautious. While my share portfolio, you know, was doing well 5 years ago, it's coming down. The prices are falling. That's why we're all feeling a bit nervous. A couple of final things. On the economy and our obsession with government debt and public policy and all these sort of things, focus on the chart on the right-hand side, government debt. Those orange lines are Australia's government debt as a share of GDP. The blue lines are Euro, Japan, US, UK. Who's got a problem with government debt, do you reckon? It's not Australia. And finally, I did work for Julia Gillard up until about 12 months ago, but a whole lot of personal reasons had me leave. Look, so in a sense, that's been both a highlight and had some disappointments in terms of my career. It was wonderful having access to how the government worked, how they framed policy, how the budget was put together, talking to the decision makers. So it's all very well to sit on the sidelines and say, oh, the government should be doing this, or they should be doing that, or they should be doing something else. I can tell you what, when you're sitting in the cabinet room and you've got the ministers talking about should we do this, that or the other, it's hugely interesting to see how the trade-offs are occurring. And I can tell you, the vast bulk of the time, it's not just political issues, it's real economic issues about how we balance the budget, what services will be cut. Tough decision taking money away from people. So that's my old boss. And as Sam so kindly introduced me a minute ago, I've set up my own business. I'm my own boss, having a wonderful time. And, one lucky thing about what I'm doing, I love economics, I love financial markets, and let's just hope this economy can keep growing a little bit longer. So thank you.